Hey guys, it's Amber. Today I wanted to talk to you about picking out watermelons. Watermelons are a really difficult fruit to pick out because you can't see the fruit inside. The texture of the watermelon is always just going to be hard, and you can't really smell the fruit inside to tell if it's ripe or not. So it's a hard fruit to pick out, and many people get frustrated with them because of that. Over the years, I've developed a system that I use, just trial and error, and also my grandfather taught me a lot of tips growing up. So I wanted to share those with you so that you can have the best watermelon picking experience. Disclaimer, these tips and tricks, even if you perform them correctly, they may not always end up with the perfect watermelon just because you have a 50-50 chance, but they will give you the best shot at getting a good watermelon. So these are my 5 tips and tricks for getting the perfect watermelon. Tip number 1 is to go with a seeded watermelon. The seeded watermelons may be a little bit more difficult to eat because it's full of seeds and you have to spit them out, but the fruit is so much sweeter and you'll get such a better experience having a seeded watermelon. And really, fruits are meant to have seeds. It's just natural, so get over yourself and go for the seeded version. Tip number 2 is to get an ugly watermelon. You don't want one that is this bright, beautiful, perfect green color. You want one that's more dark and kind of funky looking. It won't really catch most people's eyes. And the reason why you want a darker green one instead of brighter, fresh green one is because the darker ones have had a chance to sit on the vine and ripen. And that means that the fruit will be more close to being ripe and it'll be sweeter. So get an ugly melon. Tip number 3 is to get one with a yellow spot. Typically on watermelons, you'll have a spot that is either white or more yellowish. That's where the watermelon has sat on the vine. It hasn't gotten much sun. The more yellow that this spot is, the longer it had to sit on the vine, the longer that it had to ripen. You do not want a watermelon with a white spot. That being said, that's not the only factor. Sometimes watermelons, because there's so many, they didn't just sit on the ground, so they didn't develop this nice yellow spot. So sometimes you will find a watermelon without a yellow spot that's still good. For instance, this one is less yellow, but this one is going to be a good one, and I'll tell you why with tip number 5. So that's tip number 3, is to try to find a melon with a yellow spot. So, tip number 4 is you want a melon that is heavy. You want one that's heavier than it looks. And I'm telling you, I will go through and pick up every single watermelon in a bin till I find one that's the right size. And you want that because it's full of water. Hence, watermelon, it's supposed to be heavy. It's not supposed to be a light fruit. You can do exercise. Exercise. Okay, I'm going to drop this. But so you want one that's heavy. Get one that is heavier than it appears. That's common sense. That's most fruit. Okay, so tip number 5, and this is the big one, and most people look at me like I'm crazy whenever I tell them this or whenever they see me doing it. You want to slap your melon. Slap it. The reason why you're slapping it is not for the sound, it's for the feel. When your watermelon is perfectly ripe, there's going to be a lot of moisture in there. Obviously, watermelon, we've gone over this. And it's going to give a little bounce back when you slap it. It's not a big bounce back, but you'll feel it. So next time you pick out a watermelon, go through and just slap a few of them. And you'll be able to feel the difference. The good ones will give you a little bit of a bounce back. You almost feel like it's like there's a ripple effect inside the watermelon, and you slap it and it throws your hand back just ever so slightly. That's a good watermelon. The ones that don't have that you hit and it just kind of thuds and it just doesn't really do anything, you don't want that, because the fruit inside has lost all of its air, and it's just, you know, when watermelon goes bad and it just kind of compacts on itself and it gets all gooey and funky. You don't want that. You want a good one. So make sure that you slap your melon. So my top 5 tips and tricks for getting a good watermelon would be to get a seedless version, get an ugly one, check its yellow spot, make sure it's fat and heavy, and slap it. Hopefully with these tips and tricks you'll be able to pick out the perfect melon. Ooh. Oh, I can smell it. You see that? Perfect.